I never imagined I'd be sitting here, my feet crossed elegantly beneath my mahogany desk, the sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the glint of my gold watch. My silk blouse whispers against my skin, a reminder that I'm exactly where I said I would be. Yet, even in this carefully curated world of success, there's a pulse of memory I can't quite silence. My phone buzzes, a message from a number I recognize all too well. The bank. The same institution that once laughed at my dream, the same faces that told me I wasn't bank material. I stare at the screen, the corner of my mouth curling in a faint, ironic smile. My heart flutters for a second, not from fear, but from anticipation. I glance around my office, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the faint scent of leather-bound books. Everything in its place, precise, intentional, just like me. And yet, beneath this polished exterior, there's the memory of that younger, uncertain woman, trembling in a lobby, clutching her papers, full of hope, full of faith, and utterly dismissed. I take a slow breath, letting the memory fade just enough to focus. It's almost poetic, the way life loops back. And today, it seems, the universe is giving me a chance to close that circle. To finally tell them the truth. I tap a reply, deliberately slow, savoring the tension building. They have no idea what's coming. I still remember the first time I walked into that bank, my hands shaking, my resume clutched tightly, like a lifeline. I was 26, fresh out of grad school, fueled by ambition and a quiet desperation to prove myself. The polished floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. The banker looked at me over his glasses, his lips twitching with what I can now only call pity. "We don't offer loans to someone with your background," he said, tapping my application like it was a fragile artifact that didn't belong on this earth. My throat went dry, and I felt my confidence crumble, leaving a lump that made it hard to swallow. I could see the judgment in his eyes, the quiet assumption that I would fail. I walked out, my shoulders tight, my fists unconsciously clutching the folder. Outside, the city felt louder, harsher, more unforgiving. I sank onto a bench, staring at the gray streets, thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't meant for this world of finance and big dreams. But then I felt a hand on my shoulder. My grandmother. She always had a way of appearing just when I needed her most, her warm presence a shield against my insecurities. "Don't let them define you, Lily," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Opportunities don't always come from doors they open for you. Sometimes you have to build your own door." Her words sank into me like sunlight into a winter morning. I looked at the folder, at the rejection, at the sting in my chest, and made a decision. I wouldn't wait for permission. I wouldn't plead or compromise my dreams. I would find a way to succeed on my own terms, even if it meant walking a path no one believed I could. That day, I swore to myself that one day I would return, not as the timid applicant they dismissed, but as someone they could never ignore. Someone who wouldn't just succeed, someone who would redefine the rules entirely. The weeks after that rejection were some of the loneliest of my life. My friends were busy climbing their own ladders, posting shiny updates on social media, promotions, engagements, new apartments with skyline views. And there I was, back in my tiny studio apartment in Chicago, staring at a blank laptop screen, wondering if my dream was even worth chasing. But my grandmother's words kept echoing. Build your own door. So I started small. I spent endless nights teaching myself everything the banks never thought I'd understand. Business credit, investment strategies, market analysis. I devoured free webinars, secondhand textbooks, and obscure podcasts most people would scroll past. The glow of my laptop was my only companion, its blue light reflecting off my chipped nail polish and weary eyes at 2 a.m. There were moments I almost gave up. When rent was late. When I couldn't afford takeout and survived on ramen. When I sent pitch after pitch, proposal after proposal, only to be met with silence. Each rejection email felt like a tiny dagger, reopening that wound from the bank. But then came my first yes. A small business owner, An immigrant woman with a bakery on the South Side agreed to let me consult her finances. I helped her restructure her accounts, cut unnecessary costs, and within months, her bakery was not just surviving, it was thriving. The smile on her face the day she handed me a warm croissant and whispered, "You saved me," was my first taste of real victory. Word spread. Quietly at first, then louder. One client turned into three. Three became 10. I registered my own firm. On paper, it was modest, but in my heart, it was monumental. I named it after my grandmother, Marion Financial. Still, I kept it under the radar. My family thought I was freelancing. Old classmates assumed I was struggling. I never corrected them. There was power in silence, in building something without an audience to judge the messy middle. Along the way, I met Mrs. Carter, a retired Wall Street analyst turned mentor. She was sharp-tongued, brilliant, and utterly unbothered by the good old boys club she had once endured. She saw something in me I hadn't yet seen in myself. "You've got the hunger, Lily," she told me during our first coffee meeting. "Now you need the armor. Learn to wear your power like it's tailored for you." Under her guidance, I polished my skills, sharpened my instincts, and learned to walk into a room without shrinking. She introduced me to networks I never dreamed I'd access. And slowly, deal by deal, I grew. By the time I hit 30, I wasn't just helping small businesses anymore. I was investing, acquiring, and building. I still lived modestly, driving the same used car, wearing off-brand coats, never hinting at the empire quietly forming behind the scenes. Because I wasn't ready to reveal it. Not yet. Not until the moment was right. Not until the very people who had once dismissed me were forced to look me in the eye and see exactly who I had become. The email came on a Tuesday morning, just as the sun broke through the skyline. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through the day's agenda, when the subject line froze me mid-breath. Meeting request, Midwest Trust Bank. The same bank. The one that once humiliated me. Except this time, they weren't rejecting me. They were requesting me. I didn't reply immediately. I let them wait. 2 days later, after their second email, I finally agreed to a meeting. The irony was too sweet to ignore. That Friday, they arrived at my office. Not the cramped studio where I once dreamed, but the 27th floor of a glass tower overlooking downtown Chicago. My name, Marion Financial Holdings, gleamed in gold lettering in the lobby. My receptionist, polished and efficient, welcomed them with practiced warmth. I watched from behind tinted glass as they shuffled in. The same branch manager who once sneered at my application, now older, balding, adjusting his tie nervously. 2 younger executives trailed behind him, their eyes scanning the space, trying to make sense of it all. When my assistant ushered them into the boardroom, I gave them a few minutes to sit surrounded by my world. Walls adorned with abstract art from local women artists, shelves lined with leather-bound ledgers, and a single framed photo of my grandmother, smiling with a wisdom that transcended time. Finally, I entered. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step deliberate, echoing with years of untold battles. I wore a tailored navy suit, simple pearls at my ears, a look of authority, not arrogance. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady, almost melodic. I trust the wait wasn't too long. The manager's face flushed. "Ms. Williams, thank you for meeting with us. We've been following your firm's acquisitions. Impressive work. Truly impressive." I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands lightly in front of me. "Funny. I don't recall you finding me impressive a few years back, when I applied for a loan." Silence. The younger executives shifted uncomfortably. The manager cleared his throat, fumbling for words. "Well, times change. We may have underestimated your potential back then. But today, we'd like to discuss a partnership. Or perhaps even," he paused, searching my eyes, "an acquisition." I let the words hang in the air, the irony soaking into every corner of the room. Then I smiled, a small, controlled curve of my lips. "I think you misunderstand," I said softly but firmly. "I'm not here to be acquired." I reached into my portfolio and slid a document across the table. I'm here as the majority shareholder. As of last quarter, I own Midwest Trust Bank. The silence that followed was almost symphonic. Their eyes widened, disbelief rippling across their faces. The manager's mouth opened, then closed again, as if language itself had abandoned him. "You own?" he stammered. "Yes," I replied, savoring every syllable. "The bank that once denied me. The bank that told me I wasn't worth the risk. I don't just sit across the table anymore. I sit above it." Their shock was palpable, part shame, part awe. The younger executives glanced at each other, trying to process the hierarchy shift they hadn't anticipated. I let the silence linger, the weight of revelation filling the room. Then I leaned forward slightly, my eyes fixed on the man who once dismissed me. "Do you still think I'm not bank material?" His face drained of color, his hands fidgeting against the polished wood table. "Ms. Williams." But I didn't let him finish. I rose gracefully, adjusting the cuff of my jacket. "Meeting adjourned. I think you've seen all you need to see." And with that, I walked out, leaving them in the echo of their own disbelief, surrounded by walls that now belonged to me. The following week, the calls started. Not just from the bank executives, but from family too. Word travels fast when a woman does something no one expected her to do. Suddenly, cousins who once whispered about my pipe dreams were asking for career advice. An uncle who once told me I should marry rich instead of working so hard left a voicemail saying he was proud. And then there was my mother. Her voice trembled when she called. "Lily," she said carefully, "we heard about everything. Can we come see you?" Part of me wanted to slam the door on all of them. But the stronger part, the woman who had built an empire brick by brick, knew this was an opportunity. Not for revenge, for clarity, for balance. When they arrived at my home, an elegant townhouse on Lakeshore Drive, they looked around as if they'd stepped into another world. Hardwood floors polished to a shine, bookshelves filled with finance and philosophy, art collected from women-owned galleries, and in the center of it all, a vase of fresh lilies. My grandmother's favorite. They sat awkwardly on the cream sofa, waiting for me to speak. I let the silence stretch, the weight of years unspoken pressing against us. Finally, I broke it. "You all doubted me," I said plainly. "You mocked me, ignored me, even warned others not to end up like Lily. And yet here we are. Now you want my help." No one met my eyes. My mother twisted her hands in her lap. My cousins stared at the floor. "I will help you," I continued, my tone calm but firm. "But there will be conditions." Their heads lifted, startled. "To my cousin," I said, turning to her directly. "You will finish that nursing degree you abandoned. No more excuses. You have the potential to heal others, stop wasting it." She nodded quickly, eyes brimming with tears. "To my uncle," I said, meeting his uncomfortable gaze. "You'll treat your daughters with the same respect you give your sons. No more dismissing their ambitions. They deserve better." His jaw tightened, but he gave a slow, reluctant nod. Finally, I turned to my mother. This was the hardest. "And you, Mom. You will stop apologizing for me. Stop telling people I was your rebellious daughter who didn't follow tradition. Instead, you'll tell them the truth. I am the daughter who built what others were too afraid to even attempt." Her lips quivered, eyes glistening. "I can do that," she whispered. I exhaled, the room growing lighter. "I don't want obedience," I told them. "I want growth. If you want me in your lives, if you want my support, then prove you're willing to rise too. I climbed alone for too long. Now, if you're serious, you'll climb with me." It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. They would either evolve or be left behind. The weeks that followed surprised me more than the ownership papers ever had. My cousin sent me photos of her textbooks, late-night study sessions lit by the same kind of determination I once knew so well. My uncle, stubborn, proud, began attending his daughter's school events, cheering them on as if making up for lost years. And my mother, she became my fiercest advocate. Every phone call ended with her voice stronger, more certain. "My Lily runs her own bank." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was fighting to be seen. I was seen. Truly. And not just by the world, but by the people whose approval I once thought I needed to survive. One quiet evening, after a long day of meetings, I walked into my office and paused in front of the photo of my grandmother. She had passed before she could see all of this, but her words lived in every inch of who I had become. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out the folded note she once gave me, her handwriting slightly shaky but firm. When they close the door, build your own. I pressed it between my palms, the paper soft with age, and let a slow smile spread across my face. She had been right all along. The city outside my window glowed with 1,000 lights, each one a reminder of the millions of stories unfolding, dreamers chasing, fighters failing, and somewhere, someone else being told no. I wanted them to hear my story. Not as revenge, not as a warning, but as proof. Proof that a woman's worth isn't measured by the doors she's allowed to walk through, but by the ones she dares to create herself. I stood, smoothing the silk of my blouse, and whispered into the silence, almost as if she could still hear me. They refused my loan, but now I own the bank. And with those words, I turned off the lights, leaving the office bathed in moonlight, confident, unshaken, and finally, free.